Oh, hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Let's be honest, good afternoon or good evening. There's no way you're awake before noon. Good to see you guys. We're getting ready to rock and roll into the fourth lesson, which is long and a big deal. We're going to talk about two big things, which is the national budget and also gerrymandering, appropriate apportionment, and redistricting. So before we get started, I want to remind you guys about the ACT workshops every Friday. On Fridays from 11 a.m. to noon, and again at 1 p.m. until 2 p.m. If you're watching this on Thursday, make sure you're there. The code, I have the code for that Google Meet code. It's on the board. It is MOHTXJM. So if
this came back from a search.
I didn't talk to Google. So that is the join code for the class, the Google Classroom. And it's really helpful, really important. I hope that you go to that. Also, if you are watching this Thursday, remember that our AP Q&A session is tonight from 6 to 7. So that's really important. It's not mandatory, but I am taking attendance for my records and also your parents' records. So they get mad at you and not at me. So let's see if I can make this work. It looks like it's working. I don't know if it's got me. I don't know if I'm on the screen or not. Maybe not. Let's do it this way. Let's see if I can move myself. Yeah, there we go. And let me see if I can shut up some of this stuff. Oh yeah, no, that's the ticket. Okay, so let's talk budget. First of all, what's a budget? A budget is how much money we spend. That's it. All right. There's two main groups that deal with the budget. As you probably know, there is the legislative side of the budget, and then there's the executive side of the budget. And technically, the budget is a law that we're going to spend this much money. So let's start with the executive side of the budget. The simple description of the federal budget is that the president writes the budget and then Congress approves it. But the truth is the president doesn't write the budget. He has or she has a big bunch of economists and politicians who come up with the budget, and the president's like, okay, that's a good budget. It's kind of like when you have someone do your homework for you. They do the homework, and you're like, okay, that's cool. I'll turn it in. And the nerds that are doing the president's homework for them is the OMB. You got to know the OMB. It's the Office of Management and Budget. Basically, the president's accountant, and just like I said, does the homework for the president. You may see a question about fiscal year. It is not physical year, it's fiscal year. And fiscal just means money. Having to do with money. So the fiscal year starts on October 1st and ends on September 30th. And so the budget is usually ready by October. Now, you see here, it's proposed in February, and because it's a political process, it takes until October, usually. So here's some details about it. The first thing is if Congress is going to change the budget, it's called Reconciling the Budget. They have to have a majority of both houses. Okay, and that's a simple majority, right? And so both the Senate and the House have a limited debate time on what they're going to do to change the budget, and they're only allowed to reconcile the budget once a year. And so they have to use that strategically. The Senate Finance Committee is really big about when it comes to how they're going to spend. Okay, and remember that the word for the government spending money is appropriation. We're going to appropriate this money to these different places. And so remember that the OMB are the nerds doing the homework for the president, and the president proposes the budget. Superman, you're crooked. There you go. Congress has some nerds doing their homework too. And this is the Congressional Budget Office, the CBO. And that they're nonpartisan, which means they're not, it's not a majority of whoever's in control of the Senate or the House. And their job is to analyze the budget and make sure that it is a fair and good budget. And here's this word again, oversight. Remember, oversight means to oversee, to keep an eye on. It's like they babysit, right? And so they keep tabs on the OMB to make sure that they're doing something that Congress is going to agree with. So revenue. Revenue is how money comes into the government. Okay, and for the most part, it's taxes. The only other thing that's not taxes, and I don't think it's here. Well, I guess tariffs are also taxes if you think about it. Import taxes. So let's start with individual income tax. Okay, so everybody usually knows about income tax. It's a tax on how much money I make. And should I, a teacher, have to give part of my paycheck to the local, state, and federal government? Well, that's the controversy. Should the government make money in different ways? And so the tax rates vary depending on how much money you make. But the truth is, people who are wealthy find ways around it. And so you'll hear of millionaires paying nothing in income taxes because they found all these loopholes. And so that pushes for a lot of people to say we need a more simplified tax system, and rich people should pay more. Now, rich people and people who support rich people say they worked hard, they're getting paid. Why are we going to punish them for working hard? The other side says they have more, they should give their fair share. The other side says that's starting to sound like communism. And so there you go. We have corporate taxes. Corporation just means a big business. And so if you're a business, you have to pay so much of your business's earnings. Again, big corporations tend to find ways around paying their taxes, loopholes, and that's another thing that is controversial. And then we have sometimes it's called payroll taxes, not to be confused with income taxes. The real name is social insurance taxes. Okay, there will be a day when we go deep on this stuff. Social Security, Medicare, unemployment. But basically what you need to know about it right now is this is the federal government forcing us to try to set up some kind of retirement fund for ourselves. And so basically what happens is, the school hires, teachers are on a different system, so that's a really bad example. My wife works for UK, and at UK, when she gets a payday, she has to pay, I don't know, $100 to Social Security, but then UK has to pay $100 as well. That goes to the government, and the government keeps an eye on it. And every month it's $100, and then every other employee and business is $100. And the idea is that money is going to be there when they retire. If the government plays their cards right, they can get interest on that money, and you have even more. That does not work all the time, and Social Security is in a good hot mess. But we'll come back to that soon. Then we have tariffs. Okay, a tariff is an import tax. Okay, if I'm going to import PlayStations from Japan, then I have to pay tax on every PlayStation that is imported, so I can sell it. So that's what a tariff is a import tax. And then we also have excise taxes. Sometimes people call them luxury taxes. And so basically what these are is, I bought a yacht. Okay, well, if you buy a yacht, you should pay more taxes. Can you guess what I'm going to say? Yes, I'm going to say that a lot of times people get out of paying luxury taxes because they have accountants that can get the job done. When the government can make investments and take money that it has and try to gain interest, and that happens at times. And then another thing is estate taxes. Estate taxes are also called death taxes. And the reason it is this way is I am super rich, and I'm about to die, and I write up my will, and I leave all of my money to my daughter. Okay, well, now my daughter has gotten $4 million. Okay, the government's going to step in and say, hey, this is a large transaction of money. We would like a cut. Okay, and of course, if you're not a millionaire or not somebody who millionaire support, you're going to say, heck yeah, take a slice and then let's give it to homeless kids or, I don't know, schools. So there is the alarm for lunch. So I'm going to go pick up fourth period, and I will be back soon. God bless. Okay, so fourth period is back from lunch, and we will continue talking about the budget. So next up, let's talk about a thing that's on every GOPO exam that's ever existed, and that is the two types of government spending. The first is mandatory. Hopefully you know that mandatory means you have to do it. It's required. And the word that mandatory comes from is the word mandate, which is not just two bros going out to get some pizza, but instead it means you have to do it. So mandatory. The other kind is discretionary. And discretionary spending is not mandatory. It's spending at the government's discretion. So if I leave something up to my discretion, it's my call, right? If I say, okay, students, what we do on Thursday is up to your discretion, then you would all probably say, oh, we get to sleep. My mask is crooked. There we go. I kind of look like a ninja, don't you think? So mandatory, you got to. Discretionary, you don't got to. So mandatory, what's that other word for mandatory? Entitlement. Okay. Entitlement spending. Okay, so if we think of somebody who's entitled, we're like, oh, they think they deserve it, right? They think they're entitled to something, and we can kind of use that for what? Come on, mask. Everything's backwards in my thing too, so that makes it worse. Cool. Yeah. Is it crooked still? Half of this lecture is me adjusting my mask. Is it straight? Thank you. All right, fourth period is weighed in. The mask is straight. So you think of entitlement, you think, oh, they deserve it. And that's exactly what entitlement means here, is like these people deserve this money. They are entitled to it because of their situation. So, for example, Social Security is people paid into Social Security for so long, so therefore they deserve to get their money back. Medicare, Medicaid, these are also government programs that are set up for people who can't feed themselves, who can't take care of their medical spending. And they're entitled to that because they qualify for it, you know. We'll talk a ton about Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security as we get further into the game. But Medicare is basically health care for people who are over 65. And Medicaid is health care for people who are under 65 but are disabled. And then government unemployment is you lost your job and the government's going to help you out until you find a job. Now, why are people entitled to all this stuff? Well, one is they can't help themselves in this situation. They don't have that opportunity. But the second thing, still adjusting the mask. The second reason is they pay their friggin' taxes, right? And I pay my taxes, so I help my fellow man. But also, if I need help, I should get some of it. When it comes to mandatory spending, that makes up about 2/3 of the budget, 60%, golly, we're going to have to talk about the national debt too. So the national debt at this moment is dun, 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 dun. Are you excited? I know I am. The national debt. Anybody want to guess what the national debt is? Huh? You said 1 trillion, you say? 4 trillion more. It's more than 4 trillion. Less than 40 trillion. 35, a little bit less. 34 less. 33 less. 31, 32 less. Less. More.
28.
Less. 27. $27 trillion. So let me start again. 27 trillion, 786 billion, $893,500,000, and yeah. Oh, it's right here. I got it on the screen. The freshman can back me up, son. So remember this: a million is 1,000,000, right? A billion is 1,000 million, and a trillion is 1,000 billion. And we got 27 of them. What's up? All right. You AP World people, go back to whatever you're learning about. I'm sure it's probably murder. Speaking of financial murder, we are $27 trillion in debt. And so we have a we have a deficit. Every year we spend more money than we take in. So some people think the deficit should be mandatory. So right now we're at about $1 trillion for this year, 27 trillion altogether. And then we have discretionary spending. This is money that it's up to Congress for how do they divide it up. And when it comes to discretionary spending, the big thing on here is military. And so we're going to look at some pie charts about that. Hopefully I can make these a little bit bigger. Mm-hmm. Oh, come on. Apparently I can't make pictures bigger. All right. So anywho, this is 2016. This is a few years old, but it stays about the same. This is the discretionary spending budget. Okay. And you can see that out of $1.15 trillion, 54% of it goes to the military. Now, should we spend that much on the military or should we not? Well, it kind of depends on how you view the military and kind of where we stand in the world. Some people would say we need to take care of our citizens and keep them safe, and that is reasonable. Other people would say that's kind of ridiculous when you look at we only spend $74 billion on education, so that's 6% on education, 3% on science. Food and agriculture gets 1%, and that's kind of crazy because people eat food. Okay, so this is the entire budget spending. So this is not just discretionary, but it's mandatory. We take everything into consideration. And here you can see that we spend most of our budget on healthcare. So that's going to be Medicare and Medicaid, and also programs that help poor people with healthcare and Social Security. Now, the thing that sucks about Social Security is Social Security should be taken care of because the worker and the boss is supposed to be paying this in throughout their employment, and then they're just taking it back. But because the system is kind of haywire, the government still has to throw in a whole lot of money. Homeland Security gets 16%. Overall, we're giving education 3%, science 1%, veterans 4%, which really sucks because we should take care of our veterans. And so here is mandatory spending. All right. We have 49 plus 38. That would be 89, 87. Or some kind of math. Almost 90% of our mandatory spending goes to Medicare and Social Security. Again, not a lot more. And then the last pie chart we'll look at a way that some people are using data and lying about data or not being completely honest about it, and using that to prove a point that probably they could prove by being honest. And so here we go, and this is an anti-Republican thing. This is not me, Mr. Brock, is anti-Republican. Okay, I am fair to both sides. But so what they're hang on, interruption.
We'll give them back to you. Also, when we change classes,
they're metal. They're on a ring.
In my apartment to my desk. Thank you.
I know those people. Okay, very quickly, if you'll notice, it says this is a chart of federal spending, but it is discretionary spending. It is not overall federal spending. So we know that overall federal spending, the military only takes up. About 16%, but this is saying that they take 57% of all of it. And it is true that food stamps only makes up a part of the orange sliver, but here we see people using data to make you feel bad. So with that said, we'll take a pause, and I will come back to you very soon. Okay, it looks like we are back. Some history really quick on the budget is that there's been an increase in mandatory spending, and that's led to a decrease in discretionary spending. And since the 50s, that has a lot to do with welfare programs and the like, entitlement programs. And so, very quickly, budget drama breaks down to conservatives and liberals, as it usually does. And here, of course, this isn't everybody, but for the most part, conservatives say, we don't need to raise taxes. We're already taxed too much. And they also have this, a lot of them have an idea of we're spending too much on these social programs anyway. Kind of the idea of if someone's receiving a government check, they should probably be working. On the other hand, liberals say that we should invest more in social programs, food stamps, welfare, Head Start, Medicare Medicaid, and liberals say the way we should do that is to raise taxes. The disconnect here is raise taxes on whom? For conservatives across the board, they do not like the idea of raising taxes. But with liberals, it really has a slant of let's raise taxes on the rich, let's raise taxes on corporations. Okay. And then we're going to move on to talk about some reasons Congress does what they do. Definitely know this word partisanship. Partisanship is party based. So it is, I'm going to do what my party says, and my party's ideology says more than most everything else. And we can see that right now with the way our Senate and our House votes. It's often all the Republicans vote this way and all the Democrats vote that way. Sometimes a Democrat will go over here and sometimes a Republican will go over there, but it doesn't happen too often. And then another AP word that you must know is gridlock. So gridlock means everything locks up, it shuts down. And gridlock often happens because both sides won't budge. We are not a compromising type of government. And because about half of our country is liberal and the other half of the country is conservative, a lot doesn't get done. Checking the time. Looks like we have about 1 minute before we move on to the next class. So I'll pause the video and be back very soon. Oh, hey. So let's wrap this up. Sorry for all the interruptions and different videos, but that's life, right? Last thing we talked about was gridlock. Think of gridlock like a traffic jam where nobody can get through. And that's a big deal for Congress. You'll hear that word a lot in GOPO. And usually that has to do with divided government, which means the president and both chambers of Congress in the last 40 years has not usually been the same party. So, Barack Obama, I think for 2 years, he had a Senate and a House that was Democratic. Trump never did have two Senate and the House Republican. And today, in a week, on Inauguration Day, President Biden is going to have unified government, which, as you can probably guess, is going to alleviate some of this gridlock. We'll go deeper later, I promise. And we're running kind of short on time, so I'm going to hit some highlights here as far as these influences and then gerrymandering, but I really want to highlight the videos that are going to be embedded in this lecture because they explain it probably better than me. Okay, so the next thing we'll talk about is polarization. Today, the divide between liberals and conservatives is gigantic. It really is bigger than ever. And we have a lot of party line voting, meaning I'm a Democrat, I vote for all Democrats no matter what. I'm a Republican, I vote for all Republicans no matter what. And that has a big influence on electing Congress people and also what Congress can get done once they are elected. And so we also have Congress interacting a lot less than they used to because it's so easy to get to Washington and back and forth into their districts. And so back in the day, they would be in Washington for a long time. They would kind of be in a culture where all the parties are in the same town, going to the same restaurants. But nowadays, most members of Congress spend just as much, if not more time back in their districts. And why is that? They'll tell you because they want to keep hearing from their constituents and do what's best for their district. Whereas cynical Mr. Brock says they're there trying to get pork barrel spending and trying to do things to help get them reelected, fundraising and the like. And so because they're more in their home districts than in DC, there's going to be a whole lot less interaction, and therefore the parties are going to split further away. As far as so to be partisan means to be like all about your party and no compromise. And then polarization is like a magnet, right? Like you have two poles. And when we talk about party polarization, it's that the two parties are getting further and further apart. They're getting further and further polarized. Cool. Okay. Now we're going to go very quickly into redistricting. Every 10 years we have a census. Okay. And this is only going to have to deal with the House. We have a census every 10 years, and because of the way the Constitution is written, we have to have representatives allocated to each state based on population. So if a ton of people move from Kentucky to Tennessee, and the new census comes out, and there's more people in Tennessee and less people in Kentucky, we lose a House member and Tennessee gains one. And then on top of that, inside the state, we have to divide up the districts. So each district roughly has the same amount of people in it, so they can be represented. They can be represented equally within their states. Okay, so that's what we call reallocation or reapportionment. Okay, reapportionment, which is we're giving portions out to the state, and so because the majority party, and this should say in the state legislature, because they get to draw the districts, they can set up districts that benefit their party. And so we would, before 1962, and this is a court case you got to know, Baker versus Carr. Before that, the state legislature could theoretically draw a district that has one person in it, and make sure that their representative gets that one person, or make sure their representative gets a huge majority of the states. And so it can be shady. Okay. And so out of redistricting comes this word gerrymandering. And gerrymandering is what I call shady redistricting. And so because politicians control the process of redistricting, they're going to do things that benefit them. And so when it comes to gerrymandering, it's drawing those really weird districts, and it's so it benefits their party. And we'll go further into this now. So it's named after this guy named Elbridge Gerry, and I'll show you the district that your boy drew. If I can get it pulled up here. That's the wrong button. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they call it a gerrymander because, of course, they're naming it after Gerry, and then it looks like a salamander. So I'm going to try to paste this picture in here just for a second. And so this is the district that was drawn by Mr. Gerry. And as you can see, it just doesn't make sense. There's more of the state here. How is this district the same as this district? This is, as you can see, the gerrymander here has eaten Lady Liberty, and it has the Supreme Court petting it and saying, "Hey, since you just ate Lady Liberty, would you like an after-dinner mint?" And what that's talking about is how the Supreme Court, since the 60s, has upheld gerrymandering for the most part. So a party in the state legislature is going to make sure that they have safe seats. So they're going to see how many people vote for Democrats, how many people vote for Republicans, and then they're going to draw a district where their party is probably going to win. And that's usually if they say 55% or better, that's how they'll do it. And then if it's closer than that, those are usually called marginal seats or swing districts. And in 2016, swing districts were in Pennsylvania and Florida, and there were a ton of swing districts in 2020. Florida wasn't as big of a one, but Georgia was a big one. Pennsylvania and Georgia was really big. So and then when we look at the House, most of the seats are safe seats. So representatives don't really have to worry about it. Okay, very quickly, this is something you'll probably see on a GOPO exam, and it explains gerrymandering. Okay, so we have 50 people, 60% blue, 40% red. Okay, and we're going to divide them up into 5 districts. Okay, the first one is perfect representation. Obviously, if we are doing this fair, then there should be districts of 10 people, and red should get 40%, and blue should get 60%. And so here is perfect representation. Now we're going to make a situation, and blue is going to win there. Now we're going to make a situation where the districts are more compact, but it doesn't end up with blue winning with 60%. So what they've done here is they've drawn the 5 districts like they have to. All districts have 10 members, but the way it's drawn is blue wins every district. Now, if you're blue, that's the way you want to draw your district, right? Now, let's look at how red could draw these districts, okay? If you look, they're following all the rules. It's super funky, but they have made it so they give blue this district and this district, but you can see here they have 5 to 4. Sorry, 6 to 4, 6 to 4 here, and 6 to 4 here. And so in this situation, a party that only has 40% of the vote wins, and a lot of people are very angry about that. Now, who has been winning in the past 20 years? It's Republicans, okay? And, of course, the Democrats will say, oh, these Republicans, they're so shady. How are they doing this? But the truth is Democrats do it too, and they just don't have as much power in state legislatures as Republicans do. And every chance they get to draw these districts in a way that benefits their party, they do as well. It's kind of like what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So we got to talk about racial gerrymandering, okay? And in this case, Shaw versus Reno, okay? So if districts are drawn to dilute the votes of a minority, or to make the votes of a minority more powerful, the Supreme Court says that gerrymandering can be overturned. So the two redistricting Supreme Court cases you need to know is Baker versus Carr, which is one person, one vote, meaning the districts have to have the same roughly population, and then Shaw versus Reno, which is the racial gerrymandering Supreme Court case, and it says that racial gerrymandering is unconstitutional. We talked about divided government earlier. And so Barack Obama. Okay, so if we have two parties that, if we have a lot of, it's really close, especially in the Senate, they can stop a lot. Remember, every cabinet head and every judge in the federal court system is appointed by the president, but confirmed by the Senate. And so Obama in 2016, right before he was about to leave office, a Supreme Court justice died, and Obama nominated a new Supreme Court justice. But Mitch McConnell, being an awesome politician, basically said, we're not going to vote on this. We're not going to vote on this until after the 2016 election. Donald Trump won, and then Donald Trump got to nominate the Supreme Court judge, who was Brett Kavanaugh. And because of that, that was the first of three Supreme Court members that Donald Trump got to appoint. So it gives him a whole lot of power. As far as Congress, most people hate Congress. Okay, their approval rating is below 15%. But when we talk about the average individual congressperson's approval rating, it's 60%. And the truth is, it's because congresspersons really help people in their districts, and they'll say because that's their job, and cynical Mr. Brock will say that's because they want to get reelected. And then finally, I always like to end this lesson with Congress. This has Congress's approval rating at 19%. And you can see they have a lower approval rating compared to the alternative of which do you like better, Congress or head loss. People pick head loss, 67% to 19%. You get colonoscopies, you get root canals, you get the band Nickelback, which is the closest, and used car salesmen. So Americans respect used car salesmen almost twice as much as they respect members or Congress as a whole. So I'll leave you with that. And keep continuing to be awesome, and I'll see you soon.